Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to do my April reading wrap up and I read 7 books in April. Not quite as much as I hoped, but it was an interesting reading month. Initially I read 6 of these books physically and 1 on my Kindle, but I have since bought the physical copy of the Kindle book. So the first book I read this month was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Worn out after years of packing steel and raising hell, Viv really does need a change of pace. After one last score and a lot of hope, Viv heads to the street of Thun, where she plans to open the first coffee shop the city has ever seen. However, old frenemies and the city's underbelly may thwart her plans. I originally read this on Kindle Unlimited, and literally the minute I closed my Kindle down after reading it, I bought the physical copy. This has also since been picked up by Tor, so it is going to get a traditional publishing release. I absolutely loved this, and it was exactly what I needed to read at the time. This centres around Viv living the life that she chooses and learning how to resolve issues without reaching for her sword. Yes, it's slower paced, low stakes, and not a huge amount really does happen, but I really enjoyed meeting the characters and them having space to just be who they are and just watching this world and story unfold. I read this over a couple of evenings and it really was just lovely. And there is a romance in here, and it felt like the characters had already begun to care for each other before they moved their relationship on. I gave this 5 out of 5. The next book I read was The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. The Alexandrian Society is a secret society for the most talented magicians in the world. Its members are caretakers of secret knowledge gathered from the greatest civilizations of antiquity. Members can gain power and wealth beyond their wildest dreams. Every decade, 6 magicians showing the greatest talent are chosen to begin initiation. However, only 5 will make it through. I bought this in hardcover because of the hype, and honestly, it's a really nice edition. There's some illustrations in, but this took me an entire week to read. It's full of shitty people who hate each other, doing shitty things to each other. I really did have to drag my way through this, and I was stubborn and refused to give up because I had spent so much money buying the hardback because of the hype. One of the things that stood out to me is that magic is really well known in this world, and yet beyond a few mentions of like crop growth, it doesn't really seem to have a lot of impact in the world. Talents of the 6 chosen magicians seem to be remembered and forgotten as the plot required, and this was just frustrating to get through. I gave this 2 out of 5, and this will be going on the donate pile. The next book I read was, fortunately, one I enjoyed a lot more. This is Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson. I know this has been out in physical form in the US, but I think this is the first release for the UK. If you didn't back the Kickstarter, it's so shiny and pretty, and it's more shiny. Yeah. So this is book 3.5 of the Stormlight Archive. So we've this one fits between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. It says it's a novella, but it's a Brandon Sanderson novella, so it's almost as long as some shorter novels that I've read. Some of the synopsis is a bit spoilery because it is 3.5 books into the story, but there's a ghost ship and a mystery. And I love this. I really enjoy the Stormlight Archive world, and I think I'd be quite happy to just read so many of these little side stories. Yeah, it's important to the world. We do find out some interesting information, and we come across some of the more side characters of the ones in the Stormlight Archive. They have a more prominent role in this. I gave this 4 out of 5, and I'm looking forward to book 5 of the Stormlight Archive, seeing where it's going. Then I set myself a reading challenge, and I didn't quite manage the reading challenge. I planned to read an entire trilogy over a 4-day weekend, and I got most of the way through book 2. But the first book in that series is The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. On the vastness of the ice, there is no room for individuals. No one can survive alone. Difference is fatal, and Yaz knows that she's different. Beneath the ice, Yaz will learn some shocking truths and discover exactly what it means to be different. This is set in the same world as the Book of the Ancestor trilogy, Red Sister, Grey Sister and Holy Sister, and while this actually stands pretty well alone, having read that series first will give you a really good grounding of what's going on, because it uses the same magic system and it feels like it's assumed there is some knowledge of what the magic system is all about. It's also an interesting world, and you do get a better idea of the geography from that first trilogy. This does follow a new set of characters where there are a few perhaps familiar names. This is so packed in detail. This is such a vivid and well-crafted world, and I absolutely love Yaz as a character. She is so stubborn and determined, and she's very, very stubborn, but she is willing to learn when she messes things up or she just doesn't know. I gave this 4 out of 5. So the next book I read was The Girl in the Mountain by Mark Lawrence. It continues directly on from book 1, and Yaz continues to journey to find the truth. One of the things I really enjoy from Mark Lawrence is that there's a very handy recap at the start of each book telling you what the major events were so that the characters don't have to repeat themselves. I mean, I read the first book straight before this one, but I imagine if you'd waited, it would have been quite handy. This continues on, we meet some new characters and some very important events to the world are set in motion. This one is actually told from multiple perspectives, whereas the first one was only told from Yaz's perspective. I also gave this one 4 out of 5. The next book I read was Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, and this is part of my reread challenge for this year because I'm waiting for book 9 to come out in paperback, and I decided I just needed to read them all because I cannot get enough of the Expanse content. I watched the entire series in a week and a half, all 6 seasons, earlier on in the year, which is probably why my reading hasn't gone so well, because all I want to do is rewatch the Expanse. Humanity has colonised the solar system, but the stars are still out of reach. James Holden is an officer on an ice mining ship out in the rings of Saturn. When his ship discovers the abandoned scopuli, they discover that they are in possession of a secret that many would kill for. Detective Miller is looking for one girl in a system of billions. When the trail leads to the scopuli, Miller and James Holden realise that she may be at the centre of everything. I adore The Expanse so much. It is such a big, vivid and rich world, and I love the crew of the Rocinante. I could just read so many stories about them, and I'm going to because I've got all of the books ahead of me, and the short stories and novellas have just been released in a collection as well, so I have that to read. Cannot wait. I love how the colonised solar system works because it feels like such an expected next step. It doesn't feel too far-fetched. It feels lived in, and it feels like, yeah, in a couple of 100 years that could be where we are. I think this is one of my favourite series of all time. I just cannot gush about this enough. I adore it. Book 1 is more of a detective story than the rest of the books, but Miller's a great character and he's very, very interesting to read about because he has a very different perspective to James Holden. Probably shouldn't be a surprise, but I gave this 5 stars. So the final book I read is quite a heavy one, but I did manage to finish the trilogy. So this is The Girl in the Moon by Mark Lawrence. This came out this week and I have a very heavy, large format paperback. This ties together the trilogies so well, and I loved how this ended and how everyone ended up basically going forward from this one. It's a fantastic trilogy, had a lot of fun, and I gave this one 4 out of 5. So, those are all the books that I read in April. I would love to know what you read. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all soon.